Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vajajanarandana Yashoda Nandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janava Labha Givaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajajanarandana Yashodanandana Bhajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Juja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Juja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajanaranjana Yashodanandana Bhajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanasahari Yamunatira Vanasahari Jaya Radha Madhava Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajanaranjana Yashodanandana Bhajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Vishnupada Prahamsa Jakacharya Shotashata Tree Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Sri Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vishnupada Prahamsa Jakacharya Shotashata Tree Srimad, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantharaja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 25, entitled The Glories of Lord Ananta. I was asked to speak on texts 2 through 5. Most of them don't have a purport. Number 3 has a small purport, and then 5 has a more substantial one. So I'll go through the Sanskrit first for all the verses, and then proceed. Yasyadam, it's prose, by the way, so no meter, as a lot of the 5th canto is, at least in the later parts. Yasyadam Shiti Mandalam Bhagavato Nanta Murtaye Sahasra Shirsha Ekasmin Eva Shirshani Triyamanam Siddhartha Iva Lakshyate Yasyahi Va Idam Kale no Pasya Jiharshato Marsha Virachita Ruchira Ba Ramad Uruvor Antarena Sankarshano Nama Rudra Ekadasha Vayuhas Tri Akashas Tri Shikam Sulam Uttam Bayam Udash Titat Yasyan Gir Rikam Mala Yugala Runa Vishada Naka Manishanda Mandaleshva Hi Pateya Saha Satvatarash Nabir Ekanta Bhakti Yogena Vanam Ananta Swa Vadani Parispurat Kundala Prabha Mandita Ganda Stalayi Atiman No Harani Pramudita Manasa Kalau Vilokayanti Yasyevahi Nagaraja Kumarya Ashisha Ashasanash Charvanga Valaya Valasita Vishada Vipula Davala Subhaga Ruchira Bhuja Rajita Stambeshiv Aguru Chandana Kunkuma Pankanu Lepe Nave Limpamanas Tad Abira Marshan Non Matiyata Herdaya Makara Devarjavesha Ruchira Lalita Samitas Tad Anuragam Mada Mudita Mada Vikur Nitaruna Karuna Valoka Nayana Vadana Ravindam Savridram Kila Vilokayanti. So I'll just do the word for the last one instead for all of them, so as not to take up too much time. Yasya, of whom. Eva, certainly. He, indeed. Nagaraja Kumaraya, the unmarried princesses of the serpent kings. Ashisha, blessings. Ashasana, hoping for. Charu, beautiful. Anga Kalaya, on the sphere of his body. Vilasita, gleaming. Vishada, spotless. Vipula, long. Davala, white. Subhaga, indicating good fortune. Ruchira, beautiful. Bhuja, on his arms. Rajata Stambeshu, like columns of silver. Aguru, of aloe. Chandana, of sandalwood. Kunkuma, of saffron. Panka, from the pulp. Anulepena, with an ointment. Avalimpamana, smearing. Tat abhimarshana, by contact with his limbs. Unmatita, agitated. Hridaya, in their hearts. Makara Dvaja, of Cupid. Avesha, due to the entrance. Ruchira, very beautiful. Lalita, delicate. Samita, who's smiling. Tat, of him. Anuraga, of attachment. Mada, by the intoxication. Mudita, delighted. Mada, due to intoxication with kindness. Vikurnita, rolling. Aruna, pink. Karuna avaloka, glancing with kindness. Nayana, eyes. Vadana, and face. Ardavindam, like lotus flowers. Savrindam, with bashfulness. Kila, indeed. Vilokayanti, they see. The translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada, starting with text 2. Shukadev Goswami continued, this great universe, situated on one of Lord Anantadev's, thousands of hoods, appearing just like a white mustard seed. It is infinitesimal compared to the hood of Lord Ananta. At the time of devastation, when Lord Anantadev desires to destroy the entire creation, he becomes slightly angry. Then, from between his two eyebrows, appears three-eyed Rudra, carrying a trident. This Rudra, who is known as Sankarshana, is the embodiment of the 11 Rudras, or incarnations of Lord Shiva. He appears in order to devastate the entire creation. And there's a short purport with this. In each creation, the living entities are given a chance to close their business as conditioned souls. When they misuse this opportunity and do not go back home, back to Godhead, Lord Shankarshana becomes angry. The 11 Rudras, expansions of Lord Shiva, come out of Lord Shankarshana's eyebrows due to his angry mood, and all of them together devastate the entire creation. And continuing with translation. The pink transparent toenails on the Lord's lotus feet are exactly like valuable gems polished to a mirror finish. When the unalloyed devotees and the leaders of the snakes offer their obeisances to Lord Shankarshan with great devotion, they become very joyful upon seeing their own beautiful faces reflected in his toenails. Their cheeks are decorated with glittering earrings, and the beauty of their faces is extremely pleasing to see. Lord Ananta's arms are attractively long, beautifully decorated with bangles and completely spiritual. They are white, and so they appear like silver columns. When the beautiful princesses of the serpent kings, hoping for the Lord's auspicious blessing, smear his arms with a guru pulp, sandalwood pulp, and kumkum, the touch of his limbs awaken lusty desires within them. Understanding their minds, the Lord looks at the princesses with a merciful smile, and they become bashful, realizing that he knows their desires. Then they smile beautifully and look upon the Lord's lotus face, which is beautified by reddish eyes rolling slightly from intoxication and delighted by love for his devotees. Purport. When males and females touch each other's bodies, their lusty desires naturally awaken. It appears from this verse that there are similar sensations in spiritual bodies. Both Lord Ananta and the women giving him pleasure had spiritual bodies. Thus all sensations originally exist in the spiritual body. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadi Asya Yata. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented in this connection that the word adi means adi rasa, the original lusty feeling, which is born from the Supreme. However, spiritual lust and material lust are as completely different as gold and iron. Only one who is very highly elevated in spiritual realization can understand the lusty feelings exchanged between Radha and Krishna, or between Krishna and the damsels of Raj. Therefore, unless one is very experienced and advanced in spiritual realization, he is forbidden to discuss the lusty feelings of Krishna and the gopis. However, if one is a sincere and pure devotee, the material lust in his heart is completely vanquished, as he discusses the lusty feelings between the gopis and Krishna, and he makes quick progress in spiritual life. Om Agina Termandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chokshumwe Tamyana Tasmai Shri Guru Be Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Dasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in our study of the fifth canto, we are going deeper into our analysis of the structure of the material world, trying to get down to the base. So in the last few chapters, we read about the various planetary systems, the constellations, the upper planets, lower planets, Bimandala. And now we are going outside this universe to where Lord Ananta is, where he is carrying not just this universe, but all of the material universes on his hood. So actually the foundation of all of material existence, of all the various material universes, is personality. So I've talked about this before, where in the Vedic conception, the deeper you get into the ontology, into what actually exists, you will find more and more personality, which is the exact opposite of the modern scientific viewpoint or modern materialist viewpoint, where the deeper and deeper you go into reality and their conception, you find less and less personality. So in the materialist conception, you have personality as a complex coordination or combination of various material uh, processes. And then the deeper you go down, you get into cells and then organelles and eventually atoms and then quantum fields. So you get less and less personal. But in the Vedic conception, there are persons everywhere. And there's the supreme personality of Godhead everywhere, situated as the foundation of all of creation, both in the material creation and also as creation or existence per se, as in not just the material, but also the spiritual dimensions. And this actually, it's important to note that personality is the foundation of both. Because from what I've heard, at least I've not done necessarily an intense study, but if you read the works of some Mayavadi philosophers, they will actually many times praise Krishna. Write these very nice prayers to Krishna as the origin of everything, foundation of existence. But they just view him as the foundation of material existence rather than all of existence. They view him as the start of the causal chain, but as arising out of the impersonal Brahman, which is, of course, not actually the case. We know that ultimately the ultimate foundation is Krishna, and everything comes from him, both in the material sense or the physical sense, but also in the phenomenological or experiential sense. In that we read that the Supreme has emotions and the full range of emotions. In one of the verses today, we read that Lord Anantadev becomes angry, and out of that anger generates Lord Shiva, who then incarnates as the Ekadasha Rudras to devastate the entire creation at the proper time. So there is actually anger, very devastating anger in the Supreme. And sometimes people are surprised by things like this. Because they have the conception of how the Lord and how spiritual life is supposed to be. Sometimes people are surprised when devotees or even pure devotees exhibit anger because they have the conception like, oh, if you're spiritual, it's supposed to be peaceful all the time, and no, nothing's supposed to be able to bother you, and one should be equiposed at all times. But no, anger is still there. We see, of course, many examples of this in Shastra. The example that is usually given is Hanuman, who was so upset at the distress that Ravana was causing to Ram and Sita, that he burned down the entirety of Ravana's capital city. So anger is still there. And it has its uses in the proper time. The difference between the anger exhibited by devotees such as Hanuman or devotees such as Srila Prabhupada and the normal emotions of anger is that they are not controlled by anger, whereas the general conditioned soul is. There's even a whole class of crimes or defenses that, it's a crime of passion. Then one can try to get mitigated circumstances based on the fact that one is so overcome by anger that one goes temporarily insane and just acts irrationally and commits a crime, such as murder. But that's the anger of the conditioned souls. The anger of liberated souls, of course, serves a purpose, but they are not controlled by it. They instead use anger to affect some outcome for the service of Krishna. And the activities done in such a state, actually many of the activities of the Lord and the pure devotees are very hard to understand. Those who have spent some time preaching might have met people who find it very hard to understand the basic plot or background of the Bhagavad Gita. I know I was, back when I was at Mantra Lounge, I was explaining to a guest about kind of, the background, Mahabharata. So the background of Bhagavad Gita, talking about the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and, the political intrigue and how it was leading to war. I said, okay, so and then Krishna and Arjuna are coming onto the battlefield. They're coming onto the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And then she kind of interrupts and says, oh, they're there to stop the war. It's like, not exactly. They're there to make sure it happens. And this is very confusing for many people. Because how can God want a war to happen? But it is actually for the good. Just because we cannot see the way that Krishna works does not mean that it is not, that there isn't some plan behind it. I've heard my Guru Maharaj say before in a lecture that when talking about Bhagavad Gita, so many people on the planet play politics. You know, they want to get their people in. They want to get their man into office. And will do so many things to try to make it happen. If God wants to, why can't he play politics? Because everything is found in the supreme. You know, political intrigue, anger, and also, as we read in the final verse that I read today, and its purport, even the lusty feelings or lusty activities between males and females. That is also in the supreme. And this is very hard for people to understand, probably even more than anger. If you look at kind of the Western religions, the Abrahamic religions, it's very hard to even kind of get them to admit that God has a body. They view him kind of as a impersonal force or light or pure mind or something like that. That he even has, a form to get to have these sorts of interactions with his devotees at all. If you take, the Christian view, where you have the Trinity, really, 1/3 of the Trinity gets really a form that you hear anything about. Sometimes the Holy Spirit, comes as a dove or something. But really only Jesus gets, a full-fledged, body that one can actually perform pastimes in, at least that we hear about. And even then, he does not have activities in Madhurya Ras. So it's very hard for people to wrap their heads around the fact that the Lord has these conjugal pastimes. And sometimes the way that people deal with this is to say, okay, the Lord gets these pastimes, but that means I get these pastimes too. It's really just another form of envy. That, okay, Krishna has his pastimes with the gopis, but I get to imitate and I get to have my gopis also and perform pastimes. This is the Sahaja mentality, where things are taken very cheaply without any reference to either the rules or regulations of sadhana bhakti, or how actually elevated the pastime, understanding the pastimes between the gopis and Krishna, and especially between Radha and Krishna, are. Because, as Prabhupada points out, the difference between spiritual lust and material lust are as different as gold and iron. If one hears about the pastimes in Madhurya Ras from bona fide sources in the proper consciousness, one actually becomes purified of one's material lusty desires. But if one hears about them improperly, then it can actually incite more of those desires as well, which is why it is always recommended to hear from very elevated devotees about these pastimes if one hears about them at all. And that's why, for example, in Krishna book, Prabhupada spent so much time in the chapters describing the rasa dance, talking about philosophy, talking about the actual position of the Supreme Lord, and how that it is different than our conditioned position. And also, even before one gets to these pastimes, or actually any of the pastimes of Krishna, as described in the 10th canto, one has to go through 9 cantos first. So one is purified in order to actually understand the position of the original form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because the understanding of Krishna in all of his forms and in all of his pastimes are very hard to recognize. We should not think that on our own we can recognize actually what God is, what God does, what God looks like. Sometimes you hear from atheists, especially these big name ones, you might have heard them say like, oh, give me some proof, show me God. If God wants me to believe in him, then he will show up right in front of me. But how will they recognize what God looks like? If a dark-skinned cowherd boy showed up in front of them, they would not say, oh, now I'm a believer, because they would not know what God looks like or the process to actually reach him. But we have been given the process by parampara, by the succession of spiritual master after spiritual master, in order to actually elevate us to the highest stage. So we should not take this process cheaply and think that we can reach the highest stage by haphazard effort or just kind of going with the flow. We should be very serious about this process of Krishna consciousness. If we want to actually reach the topmost position and become purified of our material contamination and actually take part in the adiras, in the original feelings between Krishna and his devotees. So I'll stop here, ask if there are any questions, comments, etc. Complaints, diatribes.
Hare Krishna, Kalashmi Prabhu.
I will.
Thank you for a very nice class once again.
Thank you.
Always interesting. I'm I'm reminded by your discussion of the ways in which anger can manifest in both devotees and Krishna himself. Um, so I have some really powerful memories of Srila Prabhupada sometimes manifesting anger, and the I guess the the most prominent feature, I think, of Srila Prabhupada's anger was that the underlying motivation was always loving concern for his disciples. Sometimes there were other types of anger that he would manifest. He was sometimes kind of I guess you could call it anger. He was pretty unhappy with Mr. Nair, who was giving the devotees incredible trouble in Bombay. Um, Srila Prabhupada had nothing nice to say about that guy. Um, but in dealing with devotees or anybody really, Srila Prabhupada was always an ocean of compassion.
Hmm.
And even when he sometimes manifested anger, and his anger at times would be extremely intense. It was terrifying for devotees. Um, I on a number of occasions I saw Srila Prabhupada manifest this anger, and actually the first time I was um, almost privately with Srila Prabhupada, myself and one other devotee in his room in Mayapur. I had just arrived in Mayapur, and I had just come into Srila Prabhupada's presence for the first time since arriving, and um, uh, a young female disciple came to the door to bring some prasad. There's a very nice silver tray with various bowls of fruit, and Srila Prabhupada had a tumbler, um, tall cup that was actually made of onyx,
Hmm.
and and there was a straw, but the straw was solid gold. The devotees had tried to provide Srila Prabhupada with the best of everything. So everything was either silver or gold, and I had never seen a cup before actually made from onyx or marble, and a gold straw was quite extraordinary. But anyway, so she brought this in, put it down on a table, and Srila Prabhupada immediately exploded in anger that I had never experienced from any devotee before. And it was absolutely terrifying. I felt like I was witness to nuclear devastation. I felt like the hair had been singed off my face by
Hmm.
the intensity of the radiation of this anger. He was shouting very loudly and pounding his fist on his desk. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. I was shocked and practically quivering in fear. And and what made it worse was that for me is that I gradually realized that the anger was meant for for me as well as this young lady. The issue was that she had brought this tray in without offering her obeisances first,
Hmm.
which is an important principle that in this case Srila Prabhupada wanted to drive home. And I think it became particularly an issue because when I entered his room, I also did not offer my obeisances right away, because I didn't know that it was Srila Prabhupada's room that I was entering. I was with Harikesh Prabhu, and who was Srila Prabhupada's secretary at the time. We were in the sannyasi quarters, and he said, "Follow me." And I had no idea where we were. So he walked into Srila Prabhupada's room, and I followed behind him. But I entered the room backwards because I was poking my head out the door, looking around. We're on the third floor of the mandir, and for me, this was the first time, so I can see all around Mayapur and out to the Jalangi, and I'm just looking at the view, and I had no idea where I was. So it was some time before I turned around. I heard, voices behind me. I turned around, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting very low on just a duddy on the floor before a desk. So even when I turned around, I didn't see him there right away. I just knew that Harikesh was speaking to someone, and I became curious to see who it was. And eventually I looked down, and I was shocked to discover that, oh my God, this Srila Prabhupada is sitting here. And so I immediately dove on the floor and offered my obeisances. But, the manner in which I entered Srila Prabhupada's room was rather disrespectful. He didn't say anything right away. But then when this young lady came, then he exploded. And so a very sharp display of anger to make an important point. And then when he finished saying what he had to say, he explained to this young lady that, if you're going to bring something into the room, you put it down outside the room, you knock, you enter, and immediately offer your obeisances, and then you go out and you retrieve the item that you're bringing, and then you bring it in, and not the other way around. So the manifestation of anger is for the purpose in cases like this of making a point memorable that you cannot forget ever again. You will never forget. You'll understand the importance of the issue, and you'll never forget about it. So that's mercy. That's an extraordinary act of mercy to bless you with permanent mindfulness of an important point. It's an act of kindness. And so what next was very striking about this was that instantly, as soon as Srila Prabhupada finished explaining the point that he wanted to make, instantly the anger disappeared, like flipping a switch on and off. In an instant, completely gone, and he was suddenly smiling and pleasant, and resumed conversation with Harikesh as though nothing had happened, because his anger was completely controlled. He was not controlled by the anger. He was not compelled by anger. Personally, he did not care. But for the benefit of his disciples, he manifested this anger, and when it was no longer necessary, then he dispensed with it. He put it aside, and always completely under his control. In another instance, one sannyasi was upstairs in the mandir, and Srila Prabhupada was coming downstairs with his entourage, and as he was coming down the steps, there was a young lady waiting at the bottom of the steps, and as soon as Srila Prabhupada passed, she went running up the steps, and he stopped her and demanded to know where she was going and what was going on. So she explained that she had there was scheduled a meeting for her with this particular sannyasi, who was a GBC man. And the issue was that she needed to speak to him about her initiation. She was trying to get initiated at an upcoming fire yajna. And so Srila Prabhupada immediately, right away, you could see that Srila Prabhupada was getting quite angry. He started to raise his voice, and he demanded to immediately speak to this sannyasi. So the sannyasi was summoned, and he came down the steps, and as soon as he was in sight, Srila Prabhupada began blasting him, full blast, very high decibel, shouting and blasting him. And the issue was that he is a sannyasi, and he's meeting privately with this young girl upstairs in the sannyasi's quarters. Everyone has come downstairs. He is alone upstairs, and this girl is going to meet him. So Srila Prabhupada was very, very upset about this. And he blasted this sannyasi, and we're talking about a grown adult here. This is a grown man. I don't know, maybe in his mid to late 20s at the time. And he is cowering against the wall, seriously quivering in fear and recoiling every time Srila Prabhupada, with each syllable practically, his body is recoiling in terror and with tears streaming down his face. You kind of have to be there to appreciate it, but Srila Prabhupada's chastisements were extremely severe at times. Sometimes not so severe. He would sometimes just make some quiet remark, cutting or sometimes sarcastic, and make the point, and it would cut very deeply. The disciples would feel it very strongly, but sometimes he felt the necessity to manifest intense anger, and this was evidently one of those cases. He knew his disciples very well, and Srila Prabhupada was Trikala. Yeah, when the circumstances required, he would sometimes be able to understand the future, and he could see things. He could know the heart of his disciples. He would sometimes do things that defied the laws of nature, and his disciples would witness this all the time. He would be aware of things without there being any obvious way for him to know, in circumstances under which you would think it would be impossible for him to know, and yet he would know exactly what was going on. This sannyasi, actually, later on, he still was sometimes prone to be kind of casual about his interactions with young ladies. And I asked him about this incident, and his takeaway was that Srila Prabhupada was mistaken. He really didn't learn the lesson, which is unfortunate. But anyway, it was another instance of Srila Prabhupada manifesting very intense anger. And then again, immediately afterwards, he walked away and resumed conversation with members of his entourage as though nothing had happened, and no trace whatsoever of the extraordinary anger manifested just a moment ago. Completely under his control, never controlled by his anger, but always in control of his anger. So Srila Prabhupada could utilize everything in Krishna's service, even anger. It was always controlled. He was never subject to the control of such emotions. Anyway, you talk about devotees manifesting anger, and these events immediately come back to my mind and dominate my consciousness, because the experience was so powerful, so intense. I'll never be able to forget these things. It was shocking and terrifying. But there's a lot to learn from it, and it's the stories are worth sharing. It's glorification of Srila Prabhupada, and important points are made. Anyway, that's what came to mind. We're at 8 o'clock, so I'm gonna pipe down, and thanks again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I will. All right, so yeah, it's 8. So I guess we'll end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.